Hi everybody, this is Michelle and I have another video for you today in this stencil series. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a really simple subtle look with Versamark ink and heat embossing. So I'll be using one of the basic stencils I've designed today. This is just a skinny diagonal striped stencil, and I pulled out a sheet of yellow cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I just cut it in half at 5.5 inches, and then I'm folding it at 4.25 inches to create a horizontal top folding card. So I'm going to tape this card base down at the top so that I don't get any ink on the back of the card, and I'm taping my stencil down as well with painter's tape. And this is just a good tape to use because it's removable but still holds everything in place. If you want, you can use washi tape if you have that. And I'm just going to take my Versamark ink pad and rub the whole thing down on top of the stencil. And I'm making sure to press hard enough so that the ink goes through the stencil onto the paper. And once that's all inked up, I'm just going to be putting some clear embossing powder on top of this. And this will just give a really subtle look. It'll mostly just be shiny so you can see it in the light, but I think it adds a good subtle background to cards. If you want, you could do white embossing powder, and that would create a more bold effect, especially if you're using a darker cardstock than I did. So here you can see I heat set that off camera, and it's just a really nice shiny look that'll be a good background for the rest of our card. So I'm going to set that aside while I work on the main piece for the card. So I'm taking out a piece of watercolor paper, and I just have a whole bunch of sheets of these cut at 4.25 by 5.5 just so it's easy to pull out whenever I'm working on a card, because it's the perfect size for a card front. But I want to make it a little smaller than my card base so that I can see the heat embossing that we did, and I'm just cutting it down a few inches on the top and the sides until it's the size that I want. And to make it less boxy, I'm going to round 2 of the corners with my corner chomper using the 1/2 inch size. And I'm going to put the card front away while I work, the card base away while I work on the front. So I pulled out 2 new stamp sets that I just got from My Favorite Things, and I'm going to be using both of them. I'm going to choose a sentiment from the one on the right, and I really like this set because it has a lot of good sentiments for friends if you just want to cheer them up, and it has a lot of Christian sayings. So if you're looking for a good stamp set that has unique sentiments, this is a really good one that I'm liking so far. So I just pulled out one of those sentiments, and I'm also pulling off a bunch of the different flowers from the other stamp set. And I'm going to be doing a distress ink stamped technique with this. So I'm just going to place them the way I want them on the card first, and then I'm going to mount them all at once on an acrylic block. And I'm just putting the sentiment aside for now, but I just laid it out on the card so that I can make sure I had a space for it later on. So with all my flowers mounted up, I'm going to pull out my tin of distress inks. I recently got this little storage tin for them, and I think it's a really great solution for just having them all in one place. So I just pulled that out, and I'm pulling out my green distress ink, which is in the color Mauve Lawn. And I'm just inking up all of the bottoms of the flowers just so that the stems can be green. And then for the tops of the flowers, I'm just putting down any colorful flower colors that I think would look good. So I pulled out a yellow for one of the flowers, which is the color Scattered Straw. And then I pulled out a red color for the next one. And then next I pulled out Seedless Preserves for the flower all the way on the left. And then for the last one, I pulled out Shaded Lilac. I just wanted to have kind of like a rainbow sort of look with the flowers, but you can go with all one color if you want, or just choose whatever your favorite colors are. So once that's all inked up, I'm going to pull out my mini mister and mist some water straight onto the stamps. And since this is distress ink, it reacts to the water and creates kind of like a watercolor effect, which you'll see once I stamp this down. So I'm going to stamp it down on my watercolor paper. The water makes the ink kind of move a little bit on the stamp, and when you pull it off, it looks like you watercolored all of these flowers, even though you just use a stamp, which I think is really cool, especially if you're not good at watercoloring, but you love the look. This is a great way to do that. So I just let that dry really quickly, and I came back with my sentiment, and I just inked it up with black ink from Hero Arts. And since this is watercolor that has kind of more of a texture to it, I pulled out a mouse pad and I'm putting it underneath my watercolor paper so that when I stamp down, it gives a better impression because it has a little bit more give and I can press the ink into the paper better. So now that that's done, I just want to add a little bit of detail around the edges. So I'm just adding some dash lines with a black pen, really simple and easy to do. And this just gives more definition when I'm putting it on top of the yellow piece that we did earlier. And I also added a few little details to the flowers by taking out my white gel pen and just coloring in the insides. You could also do this if you do multicolor inking on the stamps, which I think I'm going to show on a future video because I really enjoyed doing this and I think I just want to try it again on another card. The effect was just so beautiful. So before I adhere this front onto my card base, I'm pulling out some baker's twine. I'm pulling out the yellow one so that it can match with the card front. And before I tie the bow in the front, just to make things easier, I tape down the string on the back with some painter's tape just so that nothing moves around. And I'm just going to tie a bow. I'll actually link you to a video at the top here. I recently watched this really quick tip video from Christina Werner, and she shows how to tie the perfect bow so that it doesn't twist perpendicular to your line but goes parallel to it. So you see that was really easy for me to do. And just for some more assurance that my bow will stay in place, I just took some liquid adhesive and a scrap of cardstock and I put it behind the center of the bow and glued it down. And then once that's done, I added some foam squares to the entire back of my card and I popped it up on top of the card base I created earlier. And that's pretty much it for the card. I think that the background that we did with the Versamark and the clear heat embossing just gives a really nice subtle background to the card so that it's not so plain. And the stamped watercolor technique with the distress inks gives a really cool effect with these flower stamps. So here are some close-up images of the card. I hope you enjoyed this video and have been enjoying the stencil series so far. If you look on the screen here, I have a couple of links for you for past videos that I've done in this series in case you haven't watched them yet. And you can also head over to the full playlist to check out my first video on how to create these stencils as well as all the videos I've made so far. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.